All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our October 15th, 2025 regular council meeting. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're gathered on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. We do not have any late items as far as I know, and so we'll get into adoption of minutes. First, the October 1st regular council minutes. And are there any errors or omissions? All right, we'll accept those unanimously. And then we have the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission minutes. Excellent. And any errors or omissions on those minutes? Seeing none, we'll accept those as well unanimously. And we'll get into presentations. And we have a Public Works Association of BC and the Canadian Public Works Association National Public Works Week Awards presentation. And so I'll turn on our podium microphone.
Thank you. My name is Meryl Hines. I'm the past president of the Public Works Association of BC, as well as on the nominating committee for the CPWA. It's truly my honor to be here today to celebrate the city of Courtenay and all those involved for your outstanding contributions to this year's National Public Works Week. National Public Works Week is a time to recognize the vital role of public works professionals that play in building and maintaining the infrastructure that supports our communities. This year's theme, Advancing the Quality of Life for All, perfectly captures the spirit of your work. The City of Courtenay went above and beyond, engaging the community through 5 school tours of the Operations Center, a snowplow painting contest, team building events like the Operations Center Cup, an equipment rodeo, and a dynamic social media campaign. These efforts reached over 180 students and showcased the dedication, creativity, and professionalism of your Public Works team. Your celebration didn't just stand out locally. It was recognized provincially and nationally. Courtenay won the PWABC Awards for both first-time entry and community 25 to 100,000 people. It also earned the CPWA Awards in the same category, making your event one of the most celebrated in Canada. Congratulations to everyone involved. Your work truly advances the quality of life for all. And on behalf of CPWA and PWABC, I'm honored to present this award to Mayor and Council.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I mean, really, I think a lot of the kudos goes to staff. Some of those events were just absolutely outstanding. And the way that they're connecting with our community is pretty awesome. Those snowplows were pretty fantastic, I got to say. And the open house, seeing all the kids there and the fire truck. I think it's pretty much everybody's dream to be able to handle one of those hoses, which I believe might have been at a lower pressure than normal, given the fact that the kids weren't flying around. But a great time was had by all, I know, at that event and all the things that our staff do. So kudos to staff. And Mr. Garbage, do you have a comment? Nope. All right. Any other council? Council Frisch.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I was just wondering if Kyle Shaw had anything to say. I mean, I assume this has been presented to our staff. I really feel like that's where all the work lies. And yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor. I may have had an inclination that might have been called upon to say something, so I did take the liberty to draft something. So maybe formally, I'll just offer my thanks to Meryl for coming out here today to present these awards on behalf of PWA and CPWA. It was a true honor for myself last week to attend the BC conference and accept these awards on behalf of the city, but really the thanks goes to staff. And to council for supporting us as staff to present and have these times, not only in terms of celebration for the students and the excitement that it brought to our community and the engagement, but to allow us to do it on an everyday basis. It's truly rewarding to work with the community group that we work with, as well as our staff, and provide the services to our community that we all believe so vitally responsible and heartfelt to our community in that respect. Really does showcase the event in itself. Really did showcase the amount of engagement and opportunity to connect with our community and especially the student groups. And it was a really rewarding experience, and we look forward to celebrating with staff. We're waiting for today to do the public presentation. We are anticipating having a little bit of a celebration with the Public Works group tomorrow morning as a thanks to them and celebrate their success and their involvement. So with that, thank you. We do, if it's up to everyone, it would be okay, maybe we pause quickly and do a picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a few awards, maybe we'll get everybody to hold on to them.
Council members, yes.
Oh, you want us up there?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be like all the staff are gonna come in with their high vis.
We
All
got a
right.
few here.
All right, so we probably should sit.
Like in front of
Yeah.
Yeah. Words.
Yes.
We're gonna go to the front.
Kyle? Oh, come on. You can't get us that. We can share this one. All right.
1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Oh, at least it wasn't glass.
Hand those on too. Souvenir.
Yeah. Get all the blocks.
Start
this one. Yeah, we put them all up.
Sure, let's do that.
I want them to get lost. I'll carry it back to the park. Fantastic. Thanks again very much for that. And with that, we'll move on to 4.2, which is another presentation, and this is from the Comox Valley Regional District Solid Waste Management Plan. And again, I'll fire up the podium, and away we go. Sarah Willie.
That's me.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having us today. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah Willie, Manager of Solid Waste Planning and Policy Development, working out of this office for the Comox Strathcona Waste Management, so Comox Valley plus Strathcona Regional District. We are supporting the work that your award-winning operations team does for the residents and the curb, and then managing that material at the landfill and our recycling depots. We've got a solid waste management plan process that is underway. If you recall, I was here about a year ago, last spring actually, to chat and keep everyone up to date on where that plan is at. So this is another update. We're in that step 3 phase right now. So a quick little refresher for those who are not part of our board, and then we'll get into present day. So it's this long-term vision for garbage and recycling, our solid waste management plan, and we're really looking at the programs, services, the infrastructure that we're gonna be looking at for the next 10 years to drive our diversion. We're currently operating under a 2013 plan, which is not that long ago, but there's been significant growth in the region. So, you know, back when we started this process, looking at just 2011 to 2023, 13% more people. And they really ask us, the province does, to keep these up to date through 5-year effectiveness reviews and sort of 10-year renewal time periods. There's also just changing demands from the public in terms of expectations. A lot of policy changes happening at the provincial and federal level as well. So we want to make sure that we're staying ahead of it and not caught off guard by our waste disposal options as well. Our ultimate goal as a service is really to meet our provincial obligation of driving diversion with the goal of reaching 350 kilograms per person of waste generated each year. So we're at about 551. That hasn't changed a ton in the last couple of years since we started this. We've got some improvements for sure to speak to around organics, but yeah, we're still in that realm. And we're managing about 60 to 65,000 tons a year of waste that we're disposing, and then of course additional material that we're diverting and recycling. So as I mentioned, we're here in the step 3 of the solid waste management plan renewal process. So we initiated with our advisory, we got together sort of how people interacted with our system. We established goals and guiding principles, and then we went out to the public last year on some issues that we felt might need a little more depth to the consultation before moving forward this year with our broad approach to strategies and actions for diversion. So we're here in evaluating options. Tomorrow is actually the end of our consultation period that ran for about 6 weeks and began early September. So last chance to get your surveys in and respond. And we've been out in community, everywhere across our service area, which I remind you is kind of, Cortez Island, Outer Discovery Islands, it's Sayward, it's Zabalis, and, down to our Fanny Bay, Hornby, Denman folks. So it takes a while to get to everyone. We've certainly held a number of events in the urban areas as well. So we're looking at asking the public, we've got 33 actions, they roll up to 8 strategies. And we've been going out asking people, how do you feel about these? Do you support them? Do you not? And also raising awareness around the cost implications for the addition of these programs and services. These are our 8 waste reduction strategies. These ones I feel are really kind of approachable. I think people can relate and understand sort of how they interact with waste throughout their daily lives, whether it's through the work that they're doing, being in community, in their homes, and as well, through renovation, construction, development opportunities. So we've got additional information, of course, available online, and trying to keep this presentation tight, respecting your time. We won't go through each of the 33 actions. But we will focus on a few that we really look for some collaboration with our municipal partners on. If we talk money right off the hop, our board asked us to really focus on keeping the cost implications reasonable for folks, recognizing the economic times, and also emphasizing user pay. So we split out initiatives where the costs would likely be paid through a user pay model and cost recovery versus those that we might have to fund through general revenue, and tried to aim for that 3 to 5% of our operational budget in terms of increase. So looking at a taxation increase within our CSWM component, it would equate to approximate, and these are all depending on numbers, but about $750 a year for a household value of $670,000. And that would be additional to our existing CSWM taxation rate. All right. Oh, this one's not the PDF version. This is fun. We get to action each one. Supporting actions. Boom. Right? This is way more fun. I've done this is my 4th one. It's the first one I get to hit every action with. I feel like there's going to be an emphasis on these. All right, multifamily waste. You all recall the decision, I think it was 2022, where there was a lot of challenges with service delivery in the region. And there was a call from multifamilies to get out of their business, let them handle their own. And now they all have regrets about that. So what that did for us here in Courtenay, which is, Courtenay and Campbell River certainly have our largest population of multifamily housing, is that we now have a significant amount of population and a growing population that really just don't have the same access to services as single family dwellings do. This is an area for Recycle BC as well to improve on. But what we're looking for from our municipal partners is in the future when we're building new developments, in the same way that you're considering parking, electric vehicle charging, dog urinating areas, bicycle storage, let's think about garbage. And let's think about recycling, and let's think about organics, and making sure that there's square footage allocated for that, so that it's a positive experience for people, that it's there's equal access to diversion as there is to garbage, and also, very importantly, making sure that the vehicles that need to access those spaces can get in and out of there safely and adequately. So we certainly look to support the municipalities on that, and can work with you to, draft some guidance and can also provide comment on development applications if you'd like. But that's an area for improvement on new buildings. What we see for existing buildings is everyone is a little unicorn, little snowflake on its own, and it's going to take a bit more hand holding. And so we do have some resources and actions allocated to that transition for existing buildings where it's difficult. But ultimately, we would like to start to move not just towards recycling, but also organics collection and multifamily, recognizing significant contamination challenges that come with that communal bin disposal option. All right, strategy 5. Businesses, institutions, there's a lot of actions targeted here, but the one that we really want to focus on here is leading by example. So you may have noticed over your last few meetings, just since the beginning of September, that we've introduced organics diversion here at the Harmston office, including in the kitchen. I think everyone sort of felt like about time. And, you know, we look forward to digging through the garbage and reporting back on how much of a difference that's made. But anecdotally, we can see it, you know, just in the volume, especially a paper towel that we're able to divert now that was previously going into the landfill. So we encourage you to consider in your own budgets and practices to look to your municipal buildings and consider implementing those solutions as well. Start with your ones that are inward facing, your administrative building, you know, public works building, and then look at outward facing facilities like recreation centers. Those are certainly harder to do. But again, we can provide support and leadership on that. And we've done it ourselves, and we have a great resource in Lindsay Eason, who's our community educator, who's been working through that with us. A huge part of our waste stream that we talk about is the construction, renovation, and demolition waste area. And this is really where, you know, even last week we were at a conference, myself and our communications colleague, and she just kept saying over and over, like, where are the planners in this room? Where are the building permit people in this room? Because the conversations just kept coming back to that. So there's a lot of integration and a lot of municipalities that are moving forward in this realm. So we do want to look at prioritizing deconstruction and relocation of homes through those policy recommendations. And that's where we can provide some help as well. We don't want to see, you know, one jurisdiction sort of go a little bit further than others and have development move around the region based on that. So we'd like a unified front, and we'd like to work with you on that and making sure that, you know, where there's opportunities for homes to be saved, that we can do that. It certainly saves a lot of landfill space. Looking as well at suggesting relocation or deconstruction over demolition. And that's a staffing that we would add to our allocation and share amongst communities to conduct an on-the-ground assessment of the buildings before demolition and determine, you know, what could possibly be reused and salvaged and what, you know, what's really not marketable in this time. And that would definitely help to provide some reassurance. We're learning from the local governments out there, like the District of North Vancouver and Victoria, that are kind of leading the way in this area. They both spoke at the conference last week about some tweaks that they're making to their bylaws, closing some loopholes, you know, identifying areas for improvement. I'd say both are seeing less uptake than they had anticipated when launching the program. So it's small steps, but, you know, all of these actions are contributing towards that overall goal. Our last piece is around, you know, the timelines. So driving development, a lot of the time these properties get purchased and then, you know, they look at their development opportunities, they're just boarded up, they're fenced off, they're considering what to do next. You know, just sort of staring us in the face was the property across the street here. It was a house, it was vacant for a year, you know, and then 4 days later it's gone. And then construction takes over a year. So there's time in there. It's just working with, you know, our own planning and building department, as well as those of our municipal partners, to identify, is there ways that we can try and incentivize that assessment and that, you know, deconstruction process that does take longer, through looking at how we prioritize permitting or how we, you know, move it through your flows. And I know that there's other resources and constraints and priorities in your municipality. So we're just trying to bring our little, you know, part of the pie into your picture, but we appreciate that there's other things you have to consider. All right, strategy 7 is around equalized access to services. So we have, as I mentioned, you know, rural areas, remote areas, urban areas. This one's coming up from the bottom. That's fun. We've got a few different actions here to try and look at how we can try and promote diversion in areas where we don't see the same level of convenience and accessibility. So this first one is around generator source separation. So it's a broad stroke change to our bylaw that would look at requiring all businesses, households to separate their garbage, recycling, and compost. And this isn't necessarily a collection service. This is just a requirement that they separate. So it would provide us the ability to go and ensure that there was separation occurring. It would provide us the ability to find them if there is those materials within their waste, but how they achieve that after they separate is up to them. So it provides some flexibility in how they, if they choose to take it to the depot, if they choose to recycle it themselves through their home recycling. We wouldn't advocate for it, but let's be honest, it will happen. If they want to compost at their site, if they want to have it, bring it in, take it out, lunch policy with their employees instead of offering organics pickup, if they just have a handful of employees, we're just trying to create that ability for the hauler to have that conversation with our regulation behind them. And we've seen that at the Regional District of Nanaimo, that it supports that. And Action 27 is around service standards. So we looked at what we call a convenience level standard, evaluating the different materials and their sort of prevalence within our lives. So are they things we interact with every day, or are they things that we purchase once a year or once every 10 years? What's the hazard level of those materials? How much do we not want it to go into our landfill? And trying to, for our board, it's challenging when every community has their need and their question and their ask of our board. And so it's trying to come collectively and decide, what do we want to support as convenience and accessibility across our service area, so that we're not having those individual conversations. So we looked at that, and we hope that you can support that for us. We have been just about everywhere, it feels like. Today was our last in-person event. We were at the Driftwood Mall. We definitely often get confused with the services that the city provides. So we have lots of feedback and we provide lots of answers for folks. But the conversations when we started this 2 years ago, there was a lot more questions and concerns around the carts than there is today. So I think that, that's really settling out well. The city has done great in their adoption of the food waste diversion. The city of Courtenay is, you celebrated last year, I think, a significant increase in your organics tonnage and consequently a decrease in your garbage tonnage. And I can say that not every one of our municipalities saw that. So you should certainly be proud of the effort that Chris and his staff have done in terms of getting the messaging out. Change management is hard, but all of those changes resulted in a high level of awareness, and that's resulted in diversion. So we did a waste audit here in 2025, and we did dig into the single family dwelling homes of just the city of Courtenay. And we do see, though, there's still 20% food waste in that waste stream, which you feel like, how could that possibly be? We're doing awesome. So there's still some folks out there that need a little convincing, or that maybe you're new to community, or maybe not English isn't their first language, or they're renters and they're transient. So continue to urge you to keep up that good work. But it is almost greater than 50% reduction from where we were in our last audit in 2017. So a significant improvement, and far better than, as I say, some of our other municipalities. So appreciate that. Where we do see some challenges, though, is the cart format versus manual format. So the carts lead to higher contamination. That's not a unique thing to our community. That's across the board. So we did see the highest contamination in the organic stream from the city of Courtenay waste. It's still very low at 3%, which is great, but you add that up over 10,000 tons, and it's a lot of tons of waste, especially the management of the plastics. It's a challenge for us to get out. We want to make sure we have a clean product so that we can sell that product and move that product, and it does not become a burden for us. So we hope that we can continue to work with you on that, and look forward to more tools. Yeah, and then just one other area that be great to see is again just sort of aligning policies with what we're trying to achieve here. So consider in your own policies around house moving and looking at those that it's consistent where you can with us, and feel free to reach out anytime. We're here to support your staff as well, and it doesn't have to just be waste. We're friendly. So you've got one more day. Tell all your friends. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. And glad the PowerPoint was dynamic and kept you engaged after doing it so many times. That's fantastic. I do see some questions from council. I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks very much, Sarah. It's also good to see your colleague Vivian Shaw here. I really appreciate the work you guys do. I'm struck by the number, the 20% mark. I wonder if one of the ways that we can get around that is by actually following through with picking up organics from the schools. It strikes me that if kids are learning how to do this, they're going to take it home. And I know that we've had one school in particular that's been quite vexed that we weren't doing it. How close are we to that?
Yeah, I'll sort of two-part respond on that. The 20% number is specifically from single-family dwelling homes. So that doesn't include the schools. So that number goes up when we include any other sector, for sure. Construction demolition, you see less food waste, obviously, in that sector, and it's significant, so it sort of balances it out. But on the school question, we did this summer make some progress. The superintendent was keen to move forward with some initiatives. We did see a bit of a challenge in resources available from the staff that work was delegated to. So we continue to reach out in hopes to move that forward, but we're a bit stuck there in that, it just seems like they're challenged with time and ability to move that. So continue to support that and use your voice, and we may see some movement, but we have the opportunity, we believe, to divert organics at the schools. We think we've got a strong educator in our consultant, Tina, who can help to move that forward. And we also started discussions with Recycle BC and brought them to the table about considering options for flexible plastics at the same time. They're looking at that material stream specifically. What they've done with the City of Vancouver school districts is a model that we don't think is quite right yet. And so we encourage them to consider improvements, and maybe we can pilot some of that for them. But yeah, looking to move towards those two streams if we can continue those conversations.
That's excellent, because I know speaking with classes, it's probably one of the number one questions I get asked across all the schools. But Courtenay was definitely ahead of the curve, so to speak. And I think, to Councillor Hillian's point, if the kids start doing it and taking it home, it's a stronger message to say, like, there's no reason for us not to do it. And hopefully that 20% of the single family homes have children, so that they could be impacted by that as well. So thanks so much, and we'll pass it over to Councillor Frisch.
Excuse me. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the presentation. At least, can you see me over here? The sun drive.
Nailing me.
Yeah, really excited about this. It's a great plan. I have two questions. The first one is about the cost distribution you showed us. I think it was slide 8, had the amount that the users are paying, and I guess us as well, to pay you to take our garbage. And then there's the general revenue. And I know this, I've probably debated this in the past, what the reasoning is behind doing a general revenue for garbage as opposed to just putting it completely on the users. And maybe you could just help me understand what that reason is. And also, so who are the people that are paying for it that might not actually be users as well?
Yeah, at a high level, our revenue stream, and I'm not the best at remembering numbers, so don't quote me on this, YouTube. But around 17, 18 million for our total budget. Of that, around 11 million is tipping fees. So that's what we receive from the waste that's brought to us, as well as the other divertible materials that we charge for. And then we have a taxation component that's 5.5 million-ish. And we have a small amount of revenue that also comes from recyclables and the sale of those recyclables, as well as participation in the extended producer responsibility programs, and some revenue from sales of things like compost. What we've tried to do is to keep that tax requisition component specific to projects like covering our debt servicing for past capital projects and past debt that we've incurred in order to fund those landfill closures and new construction of the landfill, as well as putting aside money for reserves for future capital. So we've tried to be consistent that we said, okay, well, let's say we're going to implement a drop off of a bagged garbage at it's
Yeah.
Hollywood Depot. The current for every presented to them. Right on pickup. It's opportunities for organics. So we see opportunities for participation, and our initial conversations are with our biggest generators. Our waste audit also shows grocery stores are number one for food waste. So, we'd like to see that those single bins that are compactors could be converted to food waste diversion and brought to us. But they're asking that question from corporate, like, is this required? And we're not there yet. So we're looking at that. Multifamily, again, comes with significant contamination challenges. So we're still fairly early in our operating phase and managing contamination just from single family. We want to make sure as well, Campbell River is moving to carts. They're still in a manual collection mode. They are our biggest municipality. They do traditionally have lower participation rates, and we expect that you will not be the highest contamination for organics in the future once they've moved to carts. So we're a little hesitant for sure to jump right into multifamily, but in the meantime, there are businesses like the one that we've partnered with here, Earth Warriors, that are offering that curated service for organics for multifamily buildings that do want to participate now in that voluntary environment. So there is opportunities.
Right, but you're saying you're short you've only got 3 million tons of
3,000.
or 3,000 tons? And so that's not enough. So
If
if
you-
we did make it mandatory, it might be problematic. At this
Yeah,
point.
the yard to food, right? Like, we're capturing a lot of the yard waste now with the single families. There's a lot less to be gathered from the businesses and from the multifamilies. So yeah, we haven't done the analysis to know what that full number is expected to be. But we do know that it exceeds that 14.5. So we're looking at options outside of the community and just understanding, what those are.
Yeah, so that is your goal, is to find capacity for the rest of it.
Yeah, within this 10-year plan, we would like to see improved organics diversion and ultimately an organics ban from landfill. But we know we need to make sure that the opportunities are there for those businesses and multifamilies before we put that ban in place.
Well, good work. I really appreciate it and look forward to hearing you come back and tell us you're ready for us to do the painful but necessary thing of requiring it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Excellent. I don't see any further questions. I guess, one of the things when you talk about service level and it sounds like there's some challenge. Do you have a timeline of when you'd be looking for that permit to be increased? Is that something that has to do with the facility being upgraded, or like what are the logistics and the realities and what's a reasonable timeline?
Yeah, I think at this point, we do still have that capacity. So I don't think that's our limiting factor. It's just how we implement and the timeline for that. So the permit is based on the facility itself and its throughput. So yeah, it would require additional capacity at the facility in order to exceed that 14,500. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then, yeah, and I mean, one of the things, I know the local return it center here in Courtenay is not going to be accepting metal by the end of the year. And so again, those service levels seem to be kind of diminishing. And so I don't know, obviously the landfill out in Cumberland will still take that, but just wondering about those kinds of impacts as those services get reduced at the more local level in our communities. So, but that's outside of your realm. So I guess with that, thanks very much for your presentation today and for PowerPoint doing its great job for you. And with that, we'll move on. Thanks again.
Guys.
All right, next we've got the council meeting calendar for 2026. And I'll pass it over to the podium. I'll fire up the podium again. All right. And Ryan Matthews is going to be talking to us about our calendar for next year.
Okay. Thank you. Through the mayor to council. The purpose of this report is to seek council's approval of the 2026 council meeting calendar. So prior to December 31st each year, council is required to adopt the annual meeting calendar for the following year, including a schedule made available to the public that includes the date, time, and place of regular council meetings. So in previous years, this calendar proposes that the regular council meetings
be scheduled for Wednesdays at 4 p.m. in the CBRD Civic Room, with in-camera sessions typically following the public meeting as needed. Since 2026 is a municipal election year, adjustments have been made to the usual schedule. There are no meetings proposed in October, as advanced voting days will take place on Wednesday, October 7th and Wednesday, October 14th, with general voting day on Saturday, October 17th. The final regular meeting before the election is proposed to be held on September 23rd, as the following Wednesday is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The inaugural council meeting is proposed for Wednesday, November 4th, which will require a procedure bylaw amendment, since the current council procedure bylaw sets the inaugural meeting date on the first Monday in November. To support learning opportunities, the 2026 calendar also includes advanced notice of council orientation sessions in late October and December, with additional days planned for early 2027. For the first time, professional development days are also included as placeholders throughout the year for workshops or training opportunities. Fewer public hearings are expected in 2026 due to provincial legislative changes under Bill 44. Therefore, hearings will be scheduled as needed. Overall, the proposed calendar is consistent with past years, with no significant financial or administrative impacts. Staff recommend that council approve the 2026 council meeting calendar and direct staff to prepare the necessary bylaw amendment for the inaugural meeting date. I'm happy to take any questions that council has.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Just you had mentioned something about the first, the bylaw says the first meeting is supposed to be, or inaugural meeting is supposed to be the first Monday in November. Is that what you said?
That's right. That's what it says in our council procedure bylaw.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it just probably didn't get updated when things got shifted to Wednesdays?
That's right. Yeah.
Like, okay, fair enough. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries, and move into amenity cost charges, ACC program and rates. And I believe Pat will be giving us all the good information, but I'll pass it over to Pat.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. I will not be presenting the information. We have Nancy Henderson here. You were given a briefing on the amenity cost charges in December of 24, and we're providing this update to you because we're moving forward. And in addition, next week we are presenting the ACCs to the development industry. We wanted you to see that before we took it to the development industry at our bi-monthly meeting. So Nancy Henderson is our consultant from Urban Systems and is here to provide a short presentation on the ACCs for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. And Ned?
Thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We do have a presentation here for you, some of which you've seen before, but it was way back in December last year. So I'll do a bit of a refresher, try to whip through that quickly, as I know you have a full agenda. But one thing we do have is some proposed rates to share with you that you have not seen yet. So we'll go over that as well. So really through the development cost charge project, it was meant to work in basically being coupled with ACC consideration as well. There was a decision last spring to sort of take a pause on the ACC and move forward with the DCC. And now we're playing a little bit of catch up. So wanted to bring council up to speed on the work that's being done and the proposed engagement that is planned to occur next week. So where we are in the process, you know, we got the direction from council last December regarding assist factors, and working with staff on developing programs and coming up with rates, and staff have been working really hard to refine both your DCC and your ACC program to come up with something that's a little bit more affordable than originally presented. So now we're at the place where we will present rates to council for your feedback before going to consultation step. In terms of ACCs, what are they? They are a relatively new tool, but the great thing about them is they can fund things that DCCs couldn't fund before, such as recreation facilities, cultural facilities, and so on. But they closely resemble DCCs in how they're developed. the methodology, if you will. One key difference is they do not need to go to the inspector of municipalities for approval. So it's just a 100% municipal approval process. But that being said, there's a strong regulation that sort of governs how they're created and a best practices guide that we need to follow. So the intention of these, when the municipalities have been lobbying for these types of tools for decades, but the intention of the province, though, is as you bring in this new tool, let's try to move away from negotiated community amenity contributions, which I know the city is very familiar with. Your focus has been on affordable housing for the most part, not all, but for the most part. So the ACCs cannot be used for affordable housing. So it's not really the tool to replace affordable housing, but when you're collecting for recreation facilities, it's really suggested by the province that you move away from those negotiations and use the ACC tool. That also allows councils to feel more comfortable with pre-zoning in advance, because you have the ability to have this revenue come in rather than using the power of zoning to negotiate. So the ACC rate, as mentioned, is very, very similar to the DCC, with the big separation of not having to go to the ministry. But we look at growth to basically inform the input and sort of supply and development to sort of project population impacts, and then divide that by the costs of the projects. So key things, these ACCs, typically you should be using projects that are known to the community. We work with staff really inform the projects, but they're pulled from like the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and other planning tools, versus just kind of coming out of projects that have never been spoken of before is the recommendation. You cannot double charge for any other parks project. So if you have fields in a parks program, for example, it can't be in the ACC. However, the ACC can pay for things that the parks DCC can't. And there's some sort of finessing you need to do there. So for example, artificial turf can't be paid for by parks DCCs, but it can through ACCs. Baseball dugouts, lighting, stuff like that, that can be charged through this program. So we make sure through the process that we're not double charging. Then you allocate benefit. Who's benefiting from this facility? If you have a deficiency and a facility needs to be replaced because it's no longer meeting needs, you can't put that on growth. So that would be the allocation that you'd be putting to the existing population. If the facility is going to be expanded or it's totally new, then we look at how it benefits the existing compared to the future. And those are part of the technical input. And then the municipal assist factor is really council's tool. If you think the prices are too high, but the program's a program, you can increase the assist factor from 1% to a higher amount. We did get direction from council to calculate rates at 1%. So that's what you're going to see today and what's attached to your report. One note, if you wanted to increase them to make it easier for development and not have as much of a development cost burden, then it's the existing taxpayer that pays the difference. You have to make up for that. The municipality, that would increase the municipal responsibility, if you will. So some of the statutory exemptions under legislation, the list here is longer than it is for the development cost charges. So a little bit of, tricky implementation when you're getting into non-market housing and making sure you're not charging the ACC, even though you might have a DCC charge. And council knows and has already flagged, you need to also be looking at waivers and reductions, and you have a separate policy or bylaw, but this is actually a statutory exemption, so it's slightly different, and I'll touch on both. But basically anything that's like non-market supportive housing is not eligible to be charged for ACCs. The other thing that's really important for the development community is in-stream protection. So if you have a subdivision bylaw or subdivision application or a building permit or precursor applications such as development permits or zoning that's already in stream, so it's already in process, the application is on hand, you have in-stream protection for a year. But you have to either finish that subdivision or finish that building permit within that 1 year period. Otherwise, the new rates will apply. And the new rates will apply to any application that comes in after the date of adoption of these bylaws. So you might see a rush of applications come forward as a result of the new charges coming into effect. So this is just a graphic example. So waivers and reductions. So council does have your existing bylaw in place. It's set to expire. It has a sunset date of 2027, and I know that's been flagged for consideration in 2026. You can also increase the exemptions for ACC should council wish. For example, if you wanted to see more non-market housing or more even market rental housing, for example, you could have a DCC reduction. But again, it's the savings to the development community or to growth would be made up for by the existing, by the taxpayer. So in terms of the program, I wanted to just identify council, the program was outlined in the report in terms of the amenities that the ACC was to pay for and how it was calculated. And also there's a more detailed memo or report attached. And with that program, rates were developed. They mirror the land use categories in the development cost charges exactly for ease of calculation. And the proposed rates are at $6,643 for a low density development, which would include a detached home, an ADU, and a secondary suite. So this is where we talked about before when we were looking at comparisons, is sometimes definitions are different. So they're kind of apples to oranges. And then you'll see the rate for medium density. High density is charged at a per square meter fee, which would make smaller apartments, for example, being less expensive, have a lower charge than larger, and same with commercial. So in terms of the cost summary, in terms of how the cost to deliver these amenities, you'll see the total capital cost of the program is $73 million. The benefit allocation ranges from 25 to 50%, with a municipal assist factor of 1%. The ACC recoverable from development is 26 million, still leaving a municipal cost over 20 years of $47 million to the municipality. So very significant. And that's $2.3 million annually, assuming development happens equally over the period of that 20 years. So I think it's also a great exercise for municipalities, seeing the cost of providing these services and recognizing that the list of the program list is being refined and whittled down. So it really sees the cost of providing this level of service to the community. When comparing the ACC that's being proposed for the city to other municipalities, they're up on the screen. I mean, some of the recommendations was also to keep the ACC fairly modest in line with the current economic conditions. I think it's important to note that the town of Comox and the village of Cumberland also have ACCs that are being proposed as well, and I apologize for them not being on this chart. So just as a comparison, Cumberland's proposed ACC is $9,621 for low density, and Comox, which is proposed to move forward next week, is $7,963. Both of those are draft, and they've been presented to the public, but they haven't been approved by council, much like Ucluelet and Abbotsford's as well. Sorry. So looking at the medium density rate, you can see the costs go down the higher the density is for the development. So, you know, likewise, Cumberland is now at 6,470 and Comox is 3,723, as opposed to the proposed Courtenay rate at 3,600. And high density, this would be based on a 75 square meter apartment. So you'll see how that compares as well. Not all municipalities charge commercial ACCs. It was a decision to include commercial into the city of Courtenay's proposed rates, as many people come into the city to work and they might use the recreation facilities while here. I might be one of those people. So then you can see that, for example, Comox and Cumberland, or Comox does not have a commercial rate. So in terms of implementation, it's recommended in the DCC Best Practices Guide that municipalities undertake economic analysis or financial feasibility analysis of development with new charges. In the amenity cost charges, it's required by legislation. The scope is somewhat undefined. So the larger that those fees are proposed to be, we would expect the financial feasibility analysis would be more in depth. The city has hired other consultants that are working on your OCP and zoning bylaw. You received a report with that analysis attached at your last meeting. We've also reviewed this and have included it in our report, which would also just be important for the background information. City Squared consultants did look at the ACC, DCC, as well as the ability to have inclusionary zoning and density bonusing in their work. And they are also concurring that ACCs can be financially feasible, but they should be at these modest rates. So if you wanted to increase the program, we would recommend that would be something that would maybe not work so well in this current market. And if council wanted to increase the program because you feel you needed more recreational facilities, then we would also probably suggest in this market, you'd want to look at increasing that assist factor to keep the rates feasible, but then you could phase it out over time. The other option is that council stays, as market conditions improve, it is recommended that you review your financial feasibility analysis to make sure that you're collecting the associated land lift. I think one final point on the economic analysis and financial feasibility is that the city is also looking at your OCP and zoning bylaw, and that when you're looking at land lift associated with pre-zoning and also financial feasibility is strongly impacted when you're streamlining your development processes. So it's not like you just have this tool. I mean, you could also reduce your road standards or reduce the requirement for, a water meter that could potentially reduce costs as well. So there's other tools that you have, but it's really important just to be looking and considering the cost of development right now because it is quite marginal. Another big one would be parking. But with the rates as proposed, considering some zoning based densities, we feel that the rates that you have are not going to deter development and development is still feasible. The Local Government Act and the provincial government also require engagement as part of ACCs. It's a requirement. DCCs, it's encouraged. We recommend that there be consultation. The people that are mostly affected by the ACC program is the development community. The city should also be updating your website, providing social media links as you did with the DCC. That I think it drew a lot of people into the conversation. The typical taxpayer, ratepayer, community or citizen tends not to be as interested in DCCs and ACCs, and the city can see this from the public open house that was available to anyone in the community. We had 0 people attend, but we had very strong representation from the development community, and we'll present a report in the coming weeks with a summary of that as well. There is also potential new legislation that's being proposed by the province to basically allow changing their payment by installment regulation to allow surety bonds. This is a big win for the development community because it essentially, when you have letters of credit, it's tying up your capital. So it's affecting sort of how their finances and how much money they can borrow, for example, where surety bonds don't have that same impact. So the development community is very happy about this change. It allows them to pay in installments up to occupancy of that dwelling or 4 years. So instead of paying in advance of them being able to sell units, it's kind of bringing those two things a little closer together, which really helps with development financing. The thing is, on the other side of the table, on the municipal side, ACCs, it's not as much of an issue because it's a new tool. But DCCs, the beginning, it's going to basically require the municipality to finance infrastructure in the ground longer than you are right now. So this is very important news for the development community and something to flag from basically the finance department's perspective. In terms of the next steps, from here, we're proposing to take the rates and information to the development community with staff at a meeting next week, and then report back to council and bring the bylaw forward to council for consideration in November. But happy to receive any feedback or comments at this time to inform those processes. Does council have any questions before you consider the options in the report?
It looks like we may have some questions and comments. We'll start with Councillor Frisch. Thanks again
Thanks.
for the presentation.
And thanks again, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. That I like where this is going. That seems quite reasonable. The one thing that I lagged was the per square meter for high density compared to the flat fee for the medium density. And I was kind of thinking, is there sort of a punitive nature here as high density becomes larger? So you talked about a 700 or 75 square meter, let's call it an apartment building or an apartment unit. You know, what if that goes up to 1,000 square meters? You know, maybe we want to see more 3 bedrooms, and then all of a sudden it's you know, it's more than a medium density flat rate. And so I wonder if yeah, what your thinking is on going with a flat rate for one, but a per square meter for the other.
Chair. To the chair. So this was a conversation that's, I think, a little bit complicated by the regional approach to the bylaws as well. So, which we've talked about when we brought the DCC forward, is do we have just a per meter charge or a unit charge? So there was, the region as a whole had a discussion and landed on low density and medium density being on a unit charge and high density being on the per square meter charge, basically incenting smaller units, and larger units are going to have to pay more. We have also had many discussions with the development community regarding average unit sizes, and like, so the 75 square meter average is very in line with like what you're seeing in the marketplace. But if someone builds something smaller and more affordable, it even is less. And it's all based on like people per unit census data. So that's how we came up with the numbers, like using the stats that are available to us. Those larger units, you know, arguably would have more people in them. So they would also, like, it would be justifiable to have a higher rate. I think one thing to keep in mind too, as we shift to more medium and high density development in the community, is that those users will also tend to probably use recreation facilities and amenities more than the low density sort of traditional single detached housing of the past, because they're going to have like space restrictions as well. If we change to, if the city of Courtenay wished to change to a per unit rate to apartment, the only ramification is like falling out of step with the rest of the region, but it's certainly at council's prerogative to do that.
Yeah, it sounds like you thought it through, and I can see how complicated it gets. Obviously, these, like any bylaw, it really doesn't hit everyone the right way all the time. But did you mention the cost for the other 2 communities for the high density and the medium density?
Through the chair, I can answer that if I skipped over it. So Cumberland's high density proposed ACC rate is 4,700 or 4,742 and change. And then Comox is 3,322, and Comox's is and Cumberland's also based on per square meter.
At around $42.
Comox is 44.30. And perhaps Cumberland, actually theirs is 4,742, and I believe it's actually on a per unit basis, because Cumberland, although wanting to transfer to like that regional approach, their DCC bylaw isn't under review right now. So Cumberland's approach is to mirror their existing DCC bylaw, but when they review that, they'll bring it all over to the regional approach.
Yeah, and I guess I'm wondering why their single families are so much larger, their ACC charge. Is that because they have bigger programs, or are they distributing it differently than we are?
Through the chair, the cost of each ACC reflects the program, and Cumberland, you know, for the smaller community, so there's less people to share in the cost, is primary factor. But they also have significant plans for rec center improvements. So it's just math.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Appreciate that. And you can leave your microphone on and because you're going to get more questions. Next, we have Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for this report. Yeah, the approach and just how this is all laid out, I think makes a good deal of sense. I mean, this is the new structure that's been handed to us, and I think the way that we're approaching it seems fairly rational. I do, and I mean, I didn't go back and look, but to me, it does seem as though what we'll see from these ACC rates are likely more than what we were previously seeing when we were negotiating community benefit agreements through rezoning. I mean, just based on my past experience, I don't think that we, although, yeah, no, it's too hard for me to even estimate on the map, but that's my sense of it, that there is an opportunity here to have some more clarity, and maybe it is going to provide some, you know, additional support for these projects that are mostly around, like, as you outlined, like community use. It's almost all rec centers and recreation-based projects, with the exception of the Florence Filberg Center expansion, which is maybe slightly less recreational, a little more community focused. But yeah, I guess I had a couple of questions. One is, you know, we have this community, or this calculation is based on a cost estimate from 2024 on these projects. And I guess one question is just how often we would go back and revise this list, as some of them are like a line item on paper where the cost really hasn't been looked at in any detail because it's just not close enough on the timeline. So it's just basically got a kind of placeholder cost on it, but we really, I mean, it could be twice as much for all we know. And yeah, so just curious what this looks like, say 2 years from now, as we kind of move along with our capital plan.
Through the chair, I can't emphasize enough the importance to keep these bylaws up to date and to reflect current costs. So, I mean, you look at what happened during COVID times with construction costs as an example. You know, basically, if in a perfect world, every single bylaw would have been updated the following year because of like 20% construction cost increases. I think the other thing to think of is if you're completing a new facilities master plan, for example, or you're getting into more detailed cost estimates and they're really looking different than what they are here, is that you should be doing those amendments. And as long as you're, you know, this also doesn't need the inspector of municipalities approval. So if you're pretty sure on what you want to do and you want to increase the cost and make sure you're collecting enough, I'd recommend fairly frequent updates, like every 2 to 3 years. Would be prudent. The other thing with these programs is they can be based on, you know, Class D, very high level cost estimates. But again, as you refine them, another reason just to keep updating the bylaw. Many of the ACC programs around the province are as simple as like rec center expansion. And like those projects have yet to be like fully defined.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a rec center expansion is a really good example because we don't exactly know what those needs are right now, but we know when it happens, it'll be, you know, not an insignificant amount of money. But then again, it's also listed as long-term. So we're just not at the point in our work plan where we would start refining that number. So I think that's helpful. Yeah, and then I guess the other thing is, you know, and this is maybe not for you specifically, but more internally at the city, that the most expensive project in this list is the outdoor pool expansion at 32 million, which represents, I think I wrote the math down, like 44% of the overall project costs. And I think it works out to 37% of the ACCs. And that one concerns me a bit in that we haven't decided which direction we're going, although that is coming up in the short term, but it could really change the amount of money that we're seeking on these fees if our you know, if council doesn't support spending, you know, $32 million on a facility that we only use for one season of the year. And then that also leads me to wonder what these are going to look like regionally, because the other piece that we haven't seen come through is the regional aspect of these fees. And our most expensive recreation costs are water and ice. And those both have some significant capital plans coming down the works. And my sense is that those could be significantly more impactful than some of the projects that we have listed here. And so in seeing that comparative chart, it's unusual that the bulk of recreation is a regional service. I think typically they are, especially in the Lower Mainland, usually offered at the municipal level. So I realize that we're not having a conversation about the regional fees, but I mean, is your sense that we could really be seeing comparables that are more in line with some of the more expensive ones on that list, just based on the fact that we're kind of only looking at one piece of this pie right now?
Yeah,
I don't know if you're part of those conversations or not, but maybe.
through the chair, you were not part of the regional ACC. However, staff may be able to answer.
All right, Ms. Saunders.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor McCullum. I don't have an update on the regional ACC discussion. There was direction from council for staff to support that discussion at the regional level, but we haven't been engaged in any conversation at this time. I mean, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that ACCs can only support the growth aspect of those projects. And so for the aquatic center, there is some growth proposed there, but it's also the replacement of the sports center pool. So there'd have to be an argument made about what is an actual increase of service to meet the growth in population versus a replacement of an existing asset. A third ice rink, though, however, would obviously fit for that. So I think there's some conversation there. In regards to the outdoor pool, it was a discussion we had internally about whether to include it or not at this time, because we don't have council direction. But because these are only at the consultation phase, it felt more transparent to include this type of project that is significant. You will notice that there's only a 30% benefit factor, which relates to the increase in capacity in the pool that would be achieved if council was to direct us to go with a replacement option. We are targeting coming back to council in late November with recommendations on the next steps on the pool, and that should time well with coming back with the ACCs so that we could make a change at that time. And then we would review, if council doesn't direct us to replace the pool, if you provide direction on any of the other options, whether any of them have growth components that could be funded through ACCs.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks for that information. And then just a final comment on the wider discussion with the development community, because there was like some options around where we could waive fees. And, you know, in our most recent conversation around rezoning, there is a component of below market units. And I didn't see that flushed out specifically, but I certainly would have an interest in providing that type of benefit for something that had like a housing agreement on it and was, meeting our criteria of below market, whether it was nonprofit or not. I could see a case for waiving fees in those circumstances, which I think are different than just looking at rental units. So I just wanted to provide that comment while we're having this discussion. Thanks.
All right. Thanks very much, Councillor McCullum and Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much for this report. It struck me that one of the most important sets of numbers here is the benefit allocation. I didn't see an awful lot of discussion on how we landed on that range. There was certainly a paragraph in the report, but from looking around at other municipalities, there is a range, and it's a broader range. Like, for example, the Burnaby has 50 to 100% is the allocation range. And that is obviously has a huge impact on sort of, where these costs fall in the end. And I was wondering if you could just help me understand what the range is within BC municipalities. I'm sure you know better than the research that I've done, and also how we specifically landed on this particular range of 25 to 50.
Through the chair, there's a lot. I mean, again, this doesn't go to the inspector of municipalities, but it's certainly something like over working on DCCs for quite a long time now. And the province with DCCs is really looking at and scrutinizing benefit allocations much more greatly than they did before. So I think some of that is also trickling into the ACC. But basically, like if you're expanding a facility and it's going to be 50% bigger than it is now, like that would be a really great example of like a 50-50 split, potentially, or even a new facility that you don't have in the community right now, benefiting, existing and proposed community members. Because some municipalities hit a threshold in population where like once you hit 50,000 people, you have this, for example, that might be more of a 50-50 split. When you're replacing something, where it's just slightly getting bigger, just based on population, and your population projection is like 25%, that's why many of them are at a 25% amount. And then the 30% benefit allocation is sort of justified, like there's slightly more benefit to the new population than the existing. It's a really tough range too when you're looking in this particular market. Is I have other clients where they're doing a 43% expansion, but that rate just is too high. It would deter development, so they can't pass that on to the development community. So they're just going, okay, fine, we'll use the projected growth at X amount to come up with the rate. So it's a bit of an art as much of it is a science when it comes to benefit allocation. There's a guide that the province has, and they have like 3 or so different methodologies and how you do that. Another approach would be if you're a municipality and you're at a very detailed level of service goal. For example, you'd have whatever one squash court for 5,000 population. You could just justify that we have the exact amount of squash courts for our existing population. Once we hit 5,000, we're going to build another one, and that's 100% allocated to growth. So there's some wiggle room, and some of it falls back to just the pure cost and affordability, not to defer development as well.
Okay, so there are circumstances where 100% could be merited. I'm not suggesting that we do that, but that could be the case. But we're keeping 50% as the top rate that we would consider applying.
That's correct. Because of the facilities, it also has to do with the facilities that have been identified. Like you'll see a lot of words around like expansion and improvements versus if you had a greenfield development, just an example I use for staff, years ago, you're looking at whatever 5,000 plus units in Raven. And that's very greenfield, very different. And if you were to build a community center in Raven that was like geared towards that population, 100% to growth or very, very high benefit allocation would make a lot of sense.
I had a couple more questions, so I don't know if I don't see any light.
Floor is yours.
Okay, sure. Thank you. And the thing I wanted to get a bit more information on was the municipalities have the ability to levy this on residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional. And some places like I believe Clulet do put it on industrial and institutional. So there's kind of a range of responses out there. I didn't see a lot of discussion on how we landed on just commercial and residential and why we would choose what would lead one to choose to exclude industrial, which we don't have much of, and institutional.
Through the chair, I mean, the decision was that the workforce coming into Courtenay to work in mostly predominantly the commercial sector right now, as industrial is fairly limited, could easily be participating in programs at the Lewis Center, for example, that are at lunchtime geared towards the working public. And that was why, the recommendation was it just ever so slightly reduces the overall impact by sharing that commercial cost. Whereas the industrial worker, I mean, most of the the industrial properties are to the south. It's maybe not geared towards, you know, their lunchtime activities, for example. And, you know, it was just, that decision was just made that it was probably more justifiable that the commercial workforce would be using the recreation facilities that aren't necessarily being caught in the residential pavement.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And it does strike me that being kind of a regional center, we do have actually quite a lot of institutional workers, people who work in this building, for example, and or at the college or at the hospital or many other institutional buildings in the city. And I would imagine those people, much like someone who works in a commercial operation, also would be quite, you know, prone to, might not live here, but might be in town during the day because that's where they work and be using. And I'm wondering, was there any thought given to like the fairly high number of institutional workers we have in our community and therefore building that in as a factor in the same way that we did with commercial?
Through the chair, I mean, certainly if council wanted to direct an amendment to the rates to include institutional, I mean, that could be incorporated into the bylaw if that was the wishes of council. Based on the projections for institutional, like not seeing, you know, large institutional development projected in the near future, it probably wouldn't have a huge impact on the rates, but it could be added if council wish to make that.
Maybe see what if anyone else has thoughts on this, but the logic you used with commercial was really clear and it made a lot of sense to me. And I think that that same logic does certainly apply to institutional. Sorry, and so one last question, which was there was a report on financial feasibility that was referenced in the staff report, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Can you tell me a bit about how how that process is conducted, the financial feasibility study, because that also has quite an impact on you know, sort of the rates that are eventually landed on.
Through the chair, we did not complete that work, but we do complete similar work and we have met with the consultant. So I can give you a high level overview because we use similar methodology. But basically you're looking at a number of case studies of different types of development in the community and applying the cost of construction, essentially completing a residual land analysis. And you're looking at if they built based on current construction costs. There were several interviews with the local development community to verify those costs as well. And then basically at the end of the day, with all of these fees, is the development still marginal and profitable? And then there's basically rules of thumb where you'll see, you know, you'll see margins that development will go ahead, and those are all tested.
All right, thanks very much. That was really helpful. Maybe ask for advice from staff that if I were wanting to move a motion that included institutional, just would that be a third clause to the recommendation and that institutional be added as a category to which ACCs are charged?
Thank you,
City
Mayor.
manager.
I believe that would be appropriate. I mean, they're going out to, we'll hear from the development community to get the feedback. We're not reading that yet. We'd have to update what that looks like because we'd have to estimate the uptake of institutional development and the classification of what institutional is. And if I may, I might defer to my colleague. So, Ms. Henderson, could you give an example of what institutional means in the context and whether it would what types of development would it include?
Sure. Basically institutional is like the public sector type development, schools, hospitals, colleges. And we do have an institutional projection associated with your development cost charges. So it's not like we can carry that over, but it does require like a recalculation of the whole model, but it would be possible to do if that's what council wishes.
Thanks for that clarification back through to Councillor Cole Hamlin. I just wanted to make sure that because we are behind the other jurisdictions who have introduced ACCs already, but council accepted our recommendation to do this carefully because I think it was important to undertake the background because we are having significant changes and the development community had asked, for us to do the best we could in terms of that information. So I think if we can, and we have that kind of readily accessible to be able to explain that, especially because the institutional people are the ones that often come to us for asks for reductions and a whole variety of these things. So we want to be upfront that would be there. And other members of council have raised kind of the institutional component in other dialogue. So thank you for that, and we can adjust our information when that engagement happens.
I see there are lights on, so perhaps I've been talking for a while, perhaps I'll turn my mic off and see what other responses are around the table, then we can look towards a recommendation.
All right, Councillor Ford.
Nope. Then does institutional miss or capture long-term care? Or would that be lumped in with residential? Like, that's the only thing I can think of that we would really increase, you know, our use of our services that might be considered institutional.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Fish. Basically, if it's a government run, sort of public facility, it would fall under institutional, when you see that long-term care, almost like a more of a medical or higher level care facility. If it was a seniors orientated independent living, I would typically trigger the residential charge.
Right. And yeah, just to recap on that, so the good reason to include institutional, like, does it really add people and services if we increase our hospital size or number of schools?
Through the chair, when you're applying ACCs to commercial or institutional properties, it's only the employee generating component.
Right. Okay, so there's a calculation involved in that.
Yeah.
Just an assumption, I guess, because we're going to come up with the rate before they're all built.
It's an assumption sort of based on, census data around employment based on land use, for example. So, you would basically have a factor of employees that are generated by so many square feet of commercial, and then that's how like the inputs to create the charge is developed.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't we catch them twice because they're going to live in a house that's being built?
Well, that is, I think, part of the considerations, and like why with the commercial charge is the employees are coming to work often in Courtenay that are not necessarily residing in Courtenay. You could say the same potentially as a percentage for institutional and industrial, I suppose, as well.
So they're driving out of town at the end of the day. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Fish, and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate Councillor Hamilton bringing that up. I think it is something that would be good to consider. Because with growth, we do have institutions. School enrollment was down for a long time, but I'm imagining it's going to start going up again, new schools. There's a couple things sort of in the hopper right now around some medical facilities. I'm assuming the college housing wouldn't have applied because that doesn't kind of include the employee piece. It's more residential, but I mean, there could be expansions to North Island College, et cetera. Yeah, I think that it would be good. I'll leave it to maybe Councillor Hamilton to formulate that, but I think it would be good to take a look at that because I think that those are growth related items. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm struggling with is if we increase institutional, would that decrease our residential numbers, or do we just throw it on top and just, if it happens, great, we get more money, but if it doesn't affect anything?
Through the chair, if you're increasing the commercial, it will theoretically decrease the residential because you have more people paying for the pot of goods.
Right. Well, the problem I see is that if people are coming to town that aren't captured in residential, then the amount that they're using services is, especially on the ACC side, in my opinion, is going to be quite low. Like, they're driving into town, they're working for the day, and then they're leaving. Otherwise, they're renting a place or they're finding a place to stay, and that's units being built for residential. So I don't know if we have a solid reason to include it, and if it actually might decrease the residential numbers. We might be losing out. Yeah, and I guess you're talking more commercial than institutional, I guess. So anyways, still contemplating it. Thanks for bringing it up, Councilor Cole Hamilton.
Right, and I'll maybe throw in a comment. I think most of my concerns have been brought up so far, but one of the things just on the general, really around the PowerPoint and the comparators, is, you know, if and when this comes back to council, it's hard for me to see how we compare to a place like Yuki or Abbotsford, which are kind of quite a bit different in terms of population and kind of how we are, and especially given the fact that you actually gave the numbers for I believe Comox and maybe Cumberland, maybe Campbell River as well. But just having those comparators might be useful in the future rather than. And I'll use Yuki as an example where it's a great place, but I don't know how it gives us information from that comparative analysis side. And ultimately, at the end of the day, unfortunately, as much as these communities might be different, will probably be compared to the Campbell Rivers and Comoxes of the world. And then given the fact, I think Councillor McCollum brought up, you know, the regional district side, if those numbers, even though they're proposed or whatever, if those numbers were in, that would also give us that bigger picture. So not just knowing what the regional district is doing, but what that final impact is on the ACCs when development is happening within the city of Courtenay. Those are my comments, which were just, I think, more general around the presentation, but I'll pass it back to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. So, I see. Councillor Hillian, you haven't spoken yet. Do you want to go ahead?
Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I think Councillor Frisch made an interesting point that you know, we want to make sure that we don't decrease the residential contribution. And I guess what I'm interested in is having staff provide us with some analysis about whether it's worthwhile to make this addition or not. So I'm hoping that the motion would go in that direction as opposed to tying us to having the decision made. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. I appreciate that comment. And I think, yeah, one of the questions is not just as a time, but what is the impact to the timeline and staff capacity as well. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. So I will move the recommendation with the addition of, and that staff bring a report back to council indicating the options for including institutional and industrial and any impacts that flow from it. Commercial's already in there. And if I may speak to that briefly, I just said that just the logic that you set out for commercial was very clear and made perfect sense to me. And it just seems that the same, if we want to be treating like things in the same way, that it would be appropriate, especially given the fairly substantial institutional presence we have here, to be considering institutional and also industrial, for that matter, sort of using the same principles and the same metrics. So that's the reason I want to be just adding that addition.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton, and that's been moved and seconded as a motion, and just making sure that what you see on the screen is what you meant. I saw your head nod, so okay, I'll take that as yes. Okay, I'll call it. Councillor Hillian.
It says there that council directs staff to include options. I heard Councillor Cole Hamilton ask that staff bring back a report on options. I think that's a different inference.
Yeah, and City Manager Mr. Garbus is going to speak to this.
Thanks. Through the chair to council generally, I just want to, what I was hearing was analyze and discuss the inclusion of institutional as a category as part of the eligible or applicable, my apologies, applicable for ACCs. And then when we come back from that engagement, advise council about the implications. So with respect to, but I'm benefiting from the conversation around this table. These minutes last forever. So in terms of any fine tuning of that, if we had any Council Director Staff. I feels clear to me as staffers, but we have both our consultant and staff responsible in development services. Is you're good with that direction? We're all on the same page?
Through the chair, maybe I'll just clarify just so I can understand how many staff reports. Would the intention be to have this information prior to the bylaw being presented for second and third reading?
I think so, yes,
okay.
because then it might actually impact that bylaw.
Mhm.
Not prior to engagement. I'm sorry, through the mayor, not prior to engagement, but prior to introduction of the bylaw. Thank you.
And I think one of the questions that I put out was just the time inference, if it was included as not as a report, but how it was first being discussed. The fact that it's a report, and I don't think necessarily impacts the timeline of meeting with the development community, et cetera. So, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to share my thoughts on the institutional industrial. I'm warming up a little bit to it. Sort of the scenario where other communities might be capturing ACCs for these workers, but then a lot of us, take in our extracurricular activities near where we work. And but I'm really curious if staff, when they come back, can sort of give us an idea of how much of this stuff we expect to see in the next little while, or if it's such a small amount that it's not even worth considering. But I'm curious what we're expecting in the way of institutional and industrial development in Courtenay, say over the next 5 or 10 years. Thanks.
All right. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I think conversation is completed. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And motion carries. All right, next we have the letter of support for the Couscous grant application. Has been moved and seconded. Nancy, you're good. No, I think most of council is pretty aware of what's going on with Couscous gum, and so appreciate staff being prepared. But I think we're ready to call the question. All those in favor? And motion carries. Okay, we'll move into the Air Park Association lease renewal that's been updated, and I will pass it over to Mr. Ainsworth.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to seek council authorization to renew the lease agreement with the Courtenay Air Park Association for an additional 5-year term, commencing January 1st, 2026. Staff have also invited Derek Masterman from Active Earth Engineering to join us online, should council have any questions with regards to the environmental report that's contained within the staff report. The Courtenay Air Park Association continues to provide aviation, community, and visitor services at the air park, including aircraft fueling, float plane operations, and hangar management. The city and the association entered into the current lease in 2021, following council's direction in December 2020 to finalize amendments that addressed environmental testing and insurance coverage. Since that time, the association has completed the required baseline recurring environmental assessments, which were reviewed by Active Earth, an independent engineering firm engaged through the city. The association also continues to manage 40 hangar spaces for private aircraft and recreational users, along with a pilot's lounge and visitor services area. Separate commercial leases exist for 4 privately held hangars within the air park. These are not part of tonight's recommendation, but will return to council at a later date. The current lease ends December 31st, 2025. The proposed renewal would extend for an additional 5 years through to December 31st, 2030, with 2 further 5-year renewal options subject to council approval. Under the lease, the city receives $1 per year in lease costs, but it does also receive 50% of annual hangar rental fees collected by the association. Based on projected rates for 2026, this equates to approximately $12,160 in the first year, with CPI adjustments in subsequent years. Through this renewal process, staff and the association discussed several requests and proposed amendments. Among the key updates, the association has agreed to remit 30% of net fuel sale profits from its self-serve fueling operations at the city. This will generate approximately $7,000 in new annual revenue. The association is also committed to continue conducting environmental assessments in accordance with the recommendations included in the report from Active Earth Engineering, and that's attached to the report as attachment 3. The association will also make reasonable efforts to incur an environmental impairment liability insurance policy with an effective date of January 1st, 2027. And that's just around risk management, sound risk management practice and control of the site. Combined, these measures improve revenue to the city and strengthen the environmental and risk management practices. Requests for longer lease terms, snow removal services, and city-funded maintenance were considered but not recommended at this time. In summary, staff recommend that council authorize renewal lease with the Courtenay Air Park Association for a 5-year term beginning January 1st, 2026, and directs that public notice be issued prior to execution. Following completion of the local area plan as outlined in the city's official community plan, staff will report back to council with any implications for future lease renewals or amendments. Be happy to take any questions.
All right, thanks very much. And I don't see any questions so far. Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries, and thanks staff for your extra work on this. It's much appreciated, and to the association. I see Ray back there, so in the gallery, so really appreciate it. And with that, we'll move on to our next item. Go ahead in front of me here, look back to it. All right, we have the Heritage House Pub License of Occupation and Air Park Cafe renewal lease as well, and I'll pass back over to Scott.
Good evening once again, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to seek authorization for 2 agreements: a license of occupation with the Heritage House Pub to formalize use of city land as a parking area, and a renewal lease for Dee's Place, also known as the Air Park Cafe, within the Marina building on the Riverway Trail. With regards to the Heritage House Pub, staff recently confirmed that a small section of city-owned land next to 975 Comox Road has long been used as part of the pub's parking lot without a formal agreement. To mitigate risk and clarify rights, staff have drafted a license of occupation covering roughly 3,900 square feet. The land remains city-owned and classified as a roadway, but this agreement formally recognizes its long-standing use. The proposed annual license fee is $1,045 with a 2% annual increase retroactive to May 1st, 2025. This provides modest revenue and ensures legal and insurance clarity for both parties. With regards to Dee's Place, or the Air Park Cafe, the cafe occupies approximately 580 square foot section of the Marina building and has operated under a city lease since 2002. The previous lease expired in 2023 and has been on a month-to-month holdover since then. The tenant has requested a 5-year renewal and asked that the city assume cleaning of the public washroom due to after-hours vandalism. So there's a washroom within the facility that's kind of mixed use for the cafe itself, as well as the general public also have access to that facility. Following review of the cleaning of that washroom, staff support the change of bringing that in-house, given to some of the changes to use that have occurred over the years. The proposed rate of $24.26 per square foot, or about $14,000 per year, reflects fair market value and includes consideration for the city taking over washroom maintenance. In summary, council is being asked to authorize a 5-year license of occupation with the Heritage House Pub with renewal options and annual license fee increases, and approve a 5-year renewal lease for Dee's Place, subject to public notice at a fair market rate and with adjusted maintenance responsibilities. Both agreements will be executed by the Chief Financial Officer if and when approved.
All right, thanks again. And we do have some questions. I'll pass it over to Councillor McCullough.
Thanks for the report. This all makes good sense, and it's good to see this coming forward and cleaning up maybe some old things that like that license of occupation that we should have maybe had past record of this first time I remember seeing this. But my question is actually around the bathroom or the change of washroom use, because it's not listed as a financial implication, but we are assuming the maintenance. So I assume we're going to allocate some new staff resources to that particular facility. And then my assumption is, on reading this report, that previously they were likely open during cafe hours, but not outside of that. And so I guess my question is twofold. what's the implications, like the financial implications of taking on the maintenance, which is maybe not a question for you specifically, Scott. And whether or not we would be expanding those facility hours to be more in line with how we open washrooms in other areas of town. I believe these, I think it even says it in the report that these are essentially the only washrooms around that area, and it is a pretty heavily used park. So just wondering if we've considered expanding those hours and the costs associated with that.
Yeah, so we, maybe I'll answer the second question first on expanding facility hours. My understanding is that the current hours of that washroom are expanded so that it's kind of dusk till dawn, even despite the fact that the cafe operating hours, I think, probably run it until about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I think that was some of the cause of some of the challenges around that facility, is because the washroom facilities open beyond the operating hours of the cafe, so there's a lot of soiling that can happen to the facility after the air park hours. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you had something to add.
Through the mayor to Councilor McCollum, I could just answer the cost of the washroom maintenance, because I think that was your question, Councilor McCollum, about how much it would cost if the city was to take on the operations. So if we operate them the same way as we do our other public washrooms, it's approximately $15,000 a year, and that would be opening it in dawn and closing at dusk, with those hours changing seasonally. So that would be there'd be no expansion to hours, I don't believe. It should match the current hours, but it would match the rest of our public washrooms.
And maybe a side question around that might be, because right now, for those that don't know that there's a bathroom, if you've never been in there, you wouldn't know there was a bathroom. So just around signage, and maybe there might be a cost to providing proper signage to it as well. I'm expecting that. I'm not expecting that to be a huge amount, but definitely something that would probably have to happen. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, just on the cleaning side, can you remind us how often is the normal cleaning schedule for something open dawn till dusk?
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Frisch. We clean it in each morning, with the exception of the herbaloo, which is cleaned twice daily. So typically at the end of each day, security is closing all the public washrooms. And then in the morning, the custodian team makes its rounds, cleans the washrooms and opens them. And so that's why the time varies a little bit. So they're just cleaned each morning.
And I assume the herbaloo is a special case because it's busier and maybe there's more people who really need to use a bathroom. Is this one of those bathrooms by midday it's not that pleasant to use, or do we have any information on where it's at out at the air park?
The herbaloo is an exception just based on our pilot of it being open 24/7, and then at council's direction. In order to basically be able to keep it open, we have to clean it twice a day. It's both volume and type of use at the herbaloo. All of our other washrooms, including like Sims and Lewis, are only cleaned once a day. If they're soiled to a degree that they can't be operated, then they're closed because we do not have like an on-call custodial team available throughout the day. So if a washroom is damaged, vandalized, or too soiled to be used, then it's closed until its next cleaning the next morning.
And how often does that happen where it's too soiled to be used?
I couldn't give you a specific number, but
Yeah.
not so frequently that it has caused us to want to bring something forward to council to reconsider that service level.
Thanks for clarifying that. And I had a quick question about the parking lot. Have we identified what the cost is to the city for that lot? Just in terms of, are we doing anything, or we have any involvement in any way, or is it in fact, they take care of everything and there is no cost to us?
Yeah, there should not be cost to the city. We have a similar parking lot lease in place alongside 17th and Cliff. So the license of occupation was structured similar to that agreement, where outside of some routine maintenance, painting some lines on the parking lot and some vegetation management that will be handled by the pub. There's typical standard language in the license of occupation around normal wear and tear and things of that nature. Yeah, I can leave it at that.
Yeah, I guess I just adding my thoughts to this. We do provide a lot of free parking for other businesses, and this seems to lump in with that, although I'm looking at the cost on a monthly basis for that business at $90 to $100, and maybe they feel like this is extremely reasonable. I don't know if you can speak on their behalf to that, but yeah, just acknowledging that we do want to support some free parking, I guess, in essence. This does seem reasonable, but I guess I was just bouncing that idea around. Did you give that any thought as to what our role should be for? I mean, it's a street end technically, right? And I think they've gone through all the effort to make it into something a little more formal.
Yeah, there's a small utility corridor underneath the roadway as well, which we felt was really important for us to ensure that the license was in place to accommodate those utilities that were underneath there. That should we need to kind of work, respond to an emergency to the utility corridor or something along those lines. In terms of public parking or making it publicly available, I suppose, we didn't put a lot of thought to that, but we do, our mind did go more to it's mostly exclusive use for parking for the pub, as opposed to other parking lots in the city, which have much more wide-ranging access for a variety of uses. In this case, we didn't put our mind to that to such an extent that we felt that the parking lot use was mostly exclusive to this business. Another thought.
That's fine. Okay, that's good. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Mr. Garber. That's good. All right, recommendation 1 has been moved and seconded. And is there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, and motion carries. Right, recommendation 2 has been moved. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, and motion carries. And we'll move into Rec Culture Community Service, the new lease agreement for 685 Avenue and 645 Cliff Avenue. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. Joanne Bays will do an introduction on this report. Council had carefully considered previous leases with respect to this facility, and much of it was driven by our previous discussion around in the Braidwood area. So we have in front of you a renewed lease with slightly different terms, but the same approach as previously.
Good afternoon, Mayor, through to Council. I'm pleased to present this staff report where we're seeking approval of a new lease agreement between the city and the Comox Valley Transition Society for the properties located at 685 and 644 Red Cliff. And those are the properties where Connect Shelter and Services Hub are located, including the adjacent storage area, which is fenced in the adjacent parking lot. Specifically, we're asking for a new two-year lease that would commence November 1st, 2025 and conclude October 31st, 2027. It would have a month-to-month renewal clause after that. It would have the same terms as the existing lease, with the exception of removal of a clause for a community advisory council regular meetings, which would be looked after by the Comox Valley Transition Society. The rationale for our recommendation is, we're awaiting opening of a shelter that provides comparable or better, even wraparound services, and that shelter, Braidwood, and support services won't be available. We're anticipating it being available in the fall of 2027. So this lease is set to expire October 31st, 2025. There is a 1-year possibility of a renewal on it, but it is expiring now. And since we don't have that shelter yet, and we know that it's coming, we're anticipated we're anticipating it coming in the fall of 2025, that, or 2027, this new term will align the transition of services, a smooth delivery of services with what we're expecting to happen. And with respect to removing the clause for the Community Advisory Council meetings, the executive director is well connected in the community and reaching out with the stakeholders or that connect impacts, including the DCBIA, RCMP, community groups, arts center, so a diversity of groups. She does this regularly. And so we're supporting her request to have that removed. So the proposal or the option that's one that is supported by staff is that 2-year new lease. There is, of course, if you want to pursue option 2, would be to keep the current lease, renew it for another year with the current terms, and yes, to give us approval to do that. We'd have to come back in a year, though, with that. And at that time, we would be asking for a new lease, 1 more year, and we would be, or termination of the contract. Any questions?
Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate the reports. I appreciate the acknowledgement from both the director of the Transition Society and staff that this is far from an ideal solution. There are challenges, but the alternative of not having the service is worse. I do wonder what changes we've seen since the partition has gone up. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding in the community, but the partition, some people have written to us criticizing that we're hiding people away. So I think it would be helpful to provide the community, if we are extending this for 2 years, which I think is a good idea, with the rationale, including the items in the report that talk about the specific services that have been provided, the scope of those services, and if possible, to add to that the number of people who the center has actually helped to move off the street and into housing or into recovery. We tend not to get those types of numbers, and it is a question that's been asked numerous times by people in the community who are concerned about the visibility as is acknowledged in the report. So those would just be the things that I would ask to be featured in any kind of publicity that we might do around this extension and in future reports to council. But in general, I support the recommendation. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. I'm not sure if you had a response for that. Oh, you've turned your mic off. So close. All right, well, I'll put it back on there for you.
Certainly, if there's an opportunity to provide public information about the good services of the facility and the storage, we could jump on that.
Excellent. And I can probably report back from the BIA that the general feedback over this year in particular, that there's just been a general improvement overall in the downtown core and with the Connect Center in general as well. So I've heard one complaint, but basically everybody else has been quite pleased with the progress this year. So, and again, hard to make everybody happy. So just want to give kudos to the folks who are working hard to make it happen. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to speak in support of the new lease and also a really big thank you to obviously staff for working with the Transition Society, but in particular the Transition Society itself, and acknowledge, just as Councillor Hillian pointed out, the massive amount of work that they do. I don't think there's a ton of organizations out there that are even willing to do this kind of work, and so to be out there dealing with these issues, trying to help people out, it really strikes me as special and really important to do. Yeah, and I also am curious what the situation would look like if we didn't open up these doors and have a willing partner to help us out. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch and Councillor Moore.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with all the comments. We're very fortunate to have a space for people and a great organization running it, and the partnership between the city and Transition Society to deal with the challenges that we have had. I was looking through the lease and maybe I've missed it, but if a miracle happens and Braidwood is open sooner, is there something in the lease that just allows for the lease to cease? I'm sorry if I missed the fine print there. For the lease to be ended sooner?
Oh, sorry. Prove it.
Through the mayor to Councillor Moore, and I don't have the specific details in front of me, but yes, there is a termination clause through enough
Oh,
notice
okay.
or mutual agreement.
Sorry
We
about
can terminate the lease. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, and with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries, and I think again, given that we've just gotten our new point in time count numbers, which does see the big number decreased, but when we look at the actual number of unsheltered folks, that number has actually increased since the last point in time count number, and so just want to keep that in mind. So thanks, Council, for helping move this forward. And we're going to go into bylaws for adoption. At this point, I'm going to invoke my acting mayor, Councillor Hillian, and I'm just going to declare a conflict of interest on the bylaw 3194 and remove one of the organizations that gets a tax exemption is I believe it's the Courtenay Marina Association or Society, and I have a boat there, and so for that reason, I'm going to remove myself for this discussion. So, thanks, Councillor Haley. And then if you want, you can call me back.
Thank you, Mayor. And so we have tax exemption 2026 bylaw 3194 2025 on the floor. Oh, sorry. First of all, we have to rescind the first three readings of bylaw number 3194. That's our step one. So we'll take a motion that moved by McCollum, seconded by Frisch. Any discussion? Councillor McCollum. Oh, all right. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Second step, we give new readings, first, second, and third reading to tax exemption 2026 bylaw number 3194 2025. Move McCollum, seconded Cole Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And where are we now? Oh,
I'll save you finding it. I'll move that council direct staff to schedule a special council meeting on Wednesday, October 22nd at 4 to adopt tax exemption 2026 bylaw 3194 2025.
second, moved by McCollum, seconded by Frisch. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And we'll turn the chair back to Mayor Wells.
Oh. So where are we keeping up? So we're just on recommendation 2 now. All right, recommendation 2, council adopt tax exemption bylaw 2026 3194 2025. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. And we have recommendation 304, tax exemption bylaw 2026. No. All right, all those in favor? And motion carries. And recommendation 4. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? And motion carries. And we'll go through council reports, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton, passing Councillor Frisch. Yep, sorry.
Yeah, just briefly wanted to share a quick thought about, those the bridge properties are all cleared up. That's really great. And I guess I was just going to throw out there, it looks like we could almost walk underneath the bridge now straight through. And I know that there was a plan at some point to have walking under there. So it's something that came up in the community. People are really excited about those properties being down and being able to move underneath, whether they're walking or by bicycle. And I'm not looking for any info from staff, but I thought I'd share that with council. I'm sure it's maybe exciting to others as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. Councillor Hillian, you're back. Councillor Joker is off tonight. Councillor McCollum. Councillor Morin. And I've got a few things. I'll just start. One of our community members is moving away, Betty Tate. She had a great event just before she left. And that's it. Yeah. So anyways, but I did just want to comment on her words to me, which were that she was very inspired by this council and happy with the work we're doing. And so I did commit to her that we'll continue doing a lot of the work that she has done in our community, and thanked her for her decades of amazing work. So also I did go to the Taiwanese 114th birthday party, what they call Double 10 Day, in Vancouver to help celebrate their event. And also on the weekend attended Diwali. Actually, Councillor Cole Hamilton was there and many other elected officials. And lastly, I just wanted to give some feedback around the Spirit Walk. Again, I know a lot of council members were there. Probably about 1,500 people from our community were there. But I met with the organizers and they just had nothing but awesome stuff to say about our staff. So I know we just won an award, but on top of that, having that many people come down basically from Harmston Park down to Lewis Park, and in a controlled way, in their words, could not have happened without the amazing work of the city staff. So again, we often get credit as the elected officials, but huge kudos to staff for helping make an event like that happen. Yeah, and looking to great events in the future. With that, we have an in-camera resolution. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries and we are in camera.